Right, you lot, and it's your favourite time of the year. It's the lecture tiller. So sorry. Statement tiller. So sorry, Irene Snogger. Just a slip of words, easy mistake to make. Right, so last year, I made a half an hour video where I complained about times we were told off at school, and it was somehow the best thing I've ever made. That really does show you the standard of my content, but I'm doing it again. Now, just to warn you lot, that they weren't as good this year. I'm not going to pretend and say that, we had more this year in my counting, but I don't think we had as many as iconic. Now, if you're new to this series, basically the idea is throughout the school year, I collect all the different telling-offs we get, also known as lectures. Now, the definition of a lecture, we don't really have one. In the beginning, we were strict on the rule that it had to be a 2-minute telling off, involving multiple people, where they have to be sat down for over 2 minutes. But then now it's just whatever memorable telling offs we have. So yeah. The annoying thing as well is that I had them in the order when they happened, in chronological order, but TMA decided to spread them everywhere. So now they're in a random order. So I just have to do it. I'll tell you some of the plot lines and give you a bit of context for some of them, but yeah. First up, we got a classic. Talking of our definition of a lecture, now going into September, we were all very scared about what the year would entail. I mean, as soon as we found out who our tutor was, we all knew that the lectures would increase, and the mere idea of looking out a window can send this man loopy. So yeah, but very quickly on, he caught onto our lecture game, and I just want to point one thing out. He seems to believe that we enjoy getting lectured, that we actively try to. No, it's only really funny when you get told off for something that is ridiculous, like saying hello to your friend or writing Fat Freddy on the board. When you do something wrong, it's not as cool, is it? But he caught onto our lecture game pretty early on, and he offered an alternative definition as, yes, it's not really the correct definition of a lecture, but somehow his definition was worse. He called it a statement. I mean, the guy claims to be this all-intelligent scientist, when clearly you showed very low IQ. I'm going to have to put it in no point. Because you can't complain about our definition and then give us a definition even worse. Double standards. Right, now the second one. This is a tragic moment in history. The unfortunate paper aeroplane catch of Junior Headley. Yes, there was a time where Junior would actually come in before he showed the presence of Madeleine McCann for the next 10 months, and in his 2 weeks, his big crime was catching a paper aeroplane. That set the scene. Sits Luke holding a paper aeroplane. He wants to eliminate Junior once and for all. He chucks the paper aeroplane right at Junior. Junior sees his life flash before his eyes, and at the last minute, he reaches out his hand to stop the paper airplane, saving his life and millions of others, becoming the King Junior that we know and love. But there's a problem. In the backfield stands leader Ihall, proud and strong, and he shouts, "It doesn't matter who called it, but I am the bad Junior now." Now, I would have put this and had a point here. However, you went for the wrong person, my guy. Considering your distaste of it, I would have thought you would have, took this as a prime opportunity to tell him off, but no, you didn't. You had one job and you failed it, so I'm going to have to put that in no point here. Right, next we got the Lakili Uno scandal. Now, we were playing a game of Uno with Lakili, and apparently he had to pick up 11. I don't know how you can pick up 11 in an Uno, considering you can't pick up in odd numbers. It's 2s or 4s, mate. But then again, the source who told me this doesn't know the months of the bloody year, so yeah, Eggy had a point, because the kiddie definitely overreacted a bit about losing in Uno. I mean, it's not exactly the lottery, mate. You've not just lost £1 billion. So I'm going to have to say he had a point there. I think the kiddie was crying afterwards, which was quite tragic. The guy was crying, give him a break. Then we got Not a Room, which clearly shows that the leader is not a true scientist. Just because it does have a door in it doesn't mean it's not a room. Dreadful. Because you claim to be a scientist, yet you don't know the definition of a room. That's Science 101, mate. I forgot about this one. We've got looking at a teacher. Now, this is one of those ones, an important rule of lectures. In the last part, I kind of said the rules of lecture, but I don't judge these based off their subject matter. For example, if you killed someone and they delivered it poorly, I would put it in dreadful or no point. Not that they didn't have a point, but so for some lectures, I'm not going to rate them based off the subject matter, but more based off how it was delivered and how it affected people. So I think that's the fairer way to do it. And with this, right, so I was told off for looking at a teacher. I accidentally made eye contact with the now deceased English teacher, and the leader is quite angry at this, I don't know why, and he comes up to me and tries to give me this full-on message. Be your own person, don't follow the crowd. Fair enough, you're trying to get, it's a nice message, however the timing was so half-out. You could have told me this any other point in the year and it would have made more sense. So I'm going to have to say dreadful, because of the way it was timed. Right, next we have going into the life skills room. There was about 10 lectures about this. I've tried to group some categories together, like the your mum jokes and all that. It happened, I guess. He really hated people entering that life skills room. It really made him rage. I don't know, maybe Irene used to like walk into life skills rooms. I don't know. There could be a backstory here. The next one's great. We got not in the science lab, Joe. When the teacher gets selected. Now, don't worry, we're going to be mentioning glue a lot in this. But, yeah, so for some reason, glue thought it'd be a good idea on World Book Day to wear a dinosaur costume around the school. Clearly showing the maturity of Patrick Star. I mean, how can we take him seriously as a presence when he goes out and does that? So I'm going to have to say that the leader had a point here. But the only reason I wouldn't put it in top tier is because he had to go at me and Sam, who were following Glue around. Surely it's his fault entirely, considering he's the adult there. I always found that a bit weird. Right, next we've got drawing. No! Drawing. I'm going to say this right eventually. Drawing on the fence. I think this lecture was given about 5 months after the crime was committed. Because we all know about the scratching the E's on the fences, which happened in term 2 and 3. But in term 5, they decided to finally tell him off about it. Which, the ironic thing is, like, it'd be like letting a shoplifter steal a bunch of stuff for a few weeks. 4 years later, when he's married and he's changed the errors of his ways, and then they decide to arrest him. You're 4 years too late, mate. Drawing on the fence, I'm going to have to go no point, because there was no point at that stage doing it. Then we got the your mum jokes, and I'm going to have to say top. I'm going to say it had a point. Only because, right, I would put it top tier, but they never had an effect. Like, your mum jokes were a staple part of this past school year for some reason. Yes, you heard me right, the jokes that were only really cool in the 90s and had that revival with the Yo Mama channel in 2018, yes, that was a staple part of our school year. I mean, no wonder we get lectured 24/7. That's our comedy. But they complained about them so many times, and they never actually followed through on anything. Say what you will about the report cards, but at least when they did make me and Sav lose our break time for talking to them, like, and we're like, oh shit, a real system. But then the system lasted about a week, and it was over. Then we got Reese's dad. No, he did not come in and spurt out his political views, tragically. I think that's the lecture we would have wanted, but I can't remember the exact wording of this lecture, but we were on about religion, and you know what the kiddies like when someone said something remotely atheist or makes a Jesus joke, which, fair enough, you can't blame them, can you? But, like, and then I remember Reese's dad saying, well, my dad's gonna hate Jesus. And then, oh yeah, because it was about alcohol, because Christians don't drink, do they? And Reese's dad notoriously does, so, and the leader was outraged at this comment. He was shaken, my guy. He couldn't believe it. I'm gonna go. It happened because it was funny. It's about Reese's dad. Then we got wee. This one's iconic. Right. Let me tell you about wee. So this was during the week of hell. That was the last week of term 3, and let me set the scene. Right, 6 people on a table. myself, Brommy, Reese, Charlie, Luke, and Lakini. There might have been Ellis there as well, I don't remember really. And we given some half-assed like a milestone activity that took the leader clearly 2 minutes to think of, and halfway through the lesson we're just taking the mick out of Lakini's Bowser impression and the wee noise. I mean, state this, all 6 people were mucking about, and all 6 of them were showing outlandish behaviour, so the correct thing the leader should have done in this situation was to tell us all off and to put us all on separate tables. So say, okay, you and Bro go at that table, you and if he wanted to split us up, the incorrect way to do this was to go at one member of the group and target them. Which one do you think the leader did? It's obviously the second one. Yeah, so Luke was sent out, and he just shouted at us afterwards, "What do you guys consider bullying?" So he had a point, but I'm putting it dreadful, because delivery is key with lecture, and he did not deliver that correctly. Then we got Prince Andrew. My dream come true, a lecture about the legend is Prince Andrew. If you don't know who he is, he's the Queen's son, and I've made quite a few jokes about him on my channel, which basically 8% of the comedy on my main channel. And Princess Anne was coming into the school, you know, the daughter of the Queen, his sister. I got to sing Change the Tide in front of her, and someone asked who Princess Anne is, and I was like making a joke about Andrew, and then he told me off for it. I can't defend myself. It's going to go in top tier, because I fully agree with the leader's words there. Like, other lectures, I'll stand up for myself and say, what the hell did I do here? Like, looking at a bloody teacher. But with that, like, I put my hands up. I'm sorry I made the joke about American Cop. I should have read the room. Then we got the whole school lecture. Now, this is one of those weird things where we all got sat down and they had a few topics. The problem with things like this is that some of the topics were good. They talked about the person who vandalised the mural. But then some of the topics were absolute shit, so I'm just going to go, it happened, because it was a mixed bag. And I feel like that's the fair tier to put it in. Then we got Luke getting sent out at right reason. I mean, the clue's in the name, isn't it? It's no point here, because there wasn't a reason. I don't remember the story here, really. Just remember one time that he was... Oh, this thing is being a problem today, isn't it? I just remember one time he was sent out for no reason. Then we got bag theft, one of the stupidest mistakes I've ever seen a teacher do. So some bloody Doris claimed that Luke was to steal a bag, which was his own bag. Hold on. How could you steal your own bloody bag? I don't know how she made this mistake. We watched him as he walked with this bag down to ends. Put the bag down, did some shizzle for a couple minutes, picked the bag back up, walked back over. How did this woman make this mistake? Because of the pure stupidity. I'm going to go dreadful. It's close to an E tier, probably, but it's just the pure audacity. Then we got simply a bystander. Now, I can't really explain this one without explaining the cereal bars one, but that's later on. So, to sum it up, right, there was a whole scandal about the cereal bars. Cereal bars were put in the washing machine, the leader went mental about this. And I was questioned about whether it was me, and I said simply, because I feel like it wasn't my place, and I expected the culprits to rat themselves out instead of me having to be the one to do it. I abstanded in position and stated that I had no involvement, so I was simply a bystander, which was true, because I had no involvement in the story, and they found this really rude. Okay, no point. And we'll get to cereal bars later, my god. Then we got Reginald being a distraction. He's a toy! He shouldn't be in sight to having his mass distraction. I thought Mrs. Orphan handled this one a lot better when she simply gave you a carrier bag to put over it. It was nice compared to the leader who used his usual unempathetic side to himself. I'm going to have to say it had a point, because they did have a point, but it was an overreaction from our famous Irene Kisser. Then we got Lakini's voice. I find this a bit unfair. Like, Eggy was complaining about how loud Lakini's voice is, which is just the bane of existence of Charlie Perry in terms 5 and 6. But it's a bit like Lakini can't really control that his voice is naturally loud. It's not really his fault, is it? So I have to say no point, because I kind of feel bad. Then we got Bin Laden. You can imagine how this went. No, it's not Prince Andrew Part 2. So in the English room, the funny setup about this lecture, actually, is that during this lesson, the English teacher was going on about how she could take banter and that she doesn't really mind a bit of a mess around, which could be considered true for the woman, but she does know when it goes too far, sort of thing. She named her bin Linda. Why you name a bin? I don't know. It's like naming a condom. Like, it's just, there's no point, is there? And as a joke, Charlie says Bin Laden, and it's Sam Fashion. Ainsley repeats this joke louder, and Ainsley's told off, because if there's one thing you gotta know about Ainsley is that he's seen as the school's answer to Naughty Norman Price. So, Bin Laden. No point. That'd be generous, I feel like. Dreadful. No, because she kind of had a point. I'll just go, it happened, I guess. Right, then we got the art teacher breakdown now. You all know the problem that was Mr. the Mandala snogger, like, Granny himself. The problem, so this year they thought, okay, we need a bit of a better art teacher. They should be saying the same about an ICT teacher next year, but thought that. So they bring in a new art teacher, and she was somehow just as bad. No, she's a weird one, because she's very bipolar. She can be very lovely sometimes, but then she switch, like, flicked like that. Like, she goes from the nicest teacher to the most horrible teacher in a matter of moments. She can go from Miss Morgan to Ian Hall in a matter of seconds. But, there was one time when she was telling off Lily, which I've not included many Lily telling off, could we be here till Christmas if I did that. But she was having a go at Lily, and then she turned it on all of us. No! It reminded me of, like, in, like, year 3, when one kid at the back would be messing about, and then the whole year group would miss, like, half a break time, and I'm like, how is that fair or just in any circumstance? So I've got to say, she had no point, and I later found out that she was autistic in this school year, and it made sense after this lecture, but, like, it wasn't really fair, was it? Then we got the singing lecture. Oh, the singing lecture. I'm gonna disappoint a lot of people, I think, with this placement. This might be the controversial one. They did have a point, but it's just one of the funniest lectures that's ever happened. It's up there with the wee. It's one of the funniest ones. So there was this lesson on singing, and Ainsley adopted a very unique singing talent of screaming. Honestly, he had the vocal range of Jedward for a few moments. So Luke, Sam and Ainsley decided to outside scream at the top of their lungs. And my argument against this would be, well, the whole point of being outside is that you can kind of be as loud as you want and run about. That's why we have break times, to do that sort of thing. And then the singing evoked a pain that you haven't heard since the days of Irene's karaoke. The leader stands up from off his golden throne, makes his way to the window, and bellows at the top of his voice, "Pocketed! I say!" I love these little storylines. I feel like the leader could be such a good, like, villain in, like, a TV show. Yeah. Then finally we got should have stopped. Then next is should have stopped him. A lesson where the now gone TA, I think this lecturer will explain why, Miss Lavin, forgot what her job was. Where she told a kid off. Raph did something wrong, right? And then she expects Luke to be the TA in this situation and go, "You should have stopped him." I'm sorry. That's your bloody job, woman. No wonder she was given the boot. It'd be like a police officer complaining about the fat cashier not stopping the shoplifter. I mean, it's your problem. It's like a cleaner complaining about someone not cleaning up. My God. Right, next we got vandalising work. Now, the art teacher is very much someone who you can go from 0 to 100 real quickly. It's like some weird venom goes on inside of her. But I got her point here. Like, you shouldn't vandalise work, obviously, but she did overreact a bit. Right, this next lecture is the most pointless lecture of all time. It might not be worse than Halo, but it's as pointless as Halo, because what was the point? So one time, right, Sam, you know that guy, the guy who main personality trait is that he makes stuff up and that he pretends to be other people. You know? So he came in late one day, like 10 minutes late, and and Reese says to him in not loud but middle tone voice, "There he is." And the leader was outraged at this comment. He stood up with great anger. He's like, "Reese, that's really rude." I genuinely struggled to see what was rude about saying "there he is." He didn't really even complain about the fact he was late. Instead of saying, "Oh, you're bloody late, mate." Okay, maybe that's a bit rude, but "there he is" not a rude line. It has to be E tier because it's so pointless. And it's got to get the award for the most pointless lecture. Talking of not pointless, we got "You're Not Our Leader." Moving on. Right, we got the Think lecture. This was a bit of a weird lecture. This was when our leader thought that he knew our minds better than us, which is a bit odd considering like it's our minds. A bit of a weird one there, but he tried to talk about like how like 100% of your brain should be focused on like this activity. Like no, like that's not really how the brain works. Again, this guy claims to be a scientist and he doesn't know how the human brain works. That's like science 101, mate. So dreadful because for a scientist you're useless. Then we got Porkies and sausages. Oh, here we go. Right, now this lecture, I'm gonna blame Luke for it because he picked. Basically, let me just tell you the story, right? So, a teacher like asked me, like, "Were we allowed to be in ends?" And we couldn't be asked to leave. But like, yeah, we asked. And she's like, "Who told you could?" And he picked the one man who definitely would not have let us. Like, if he would have said like Mrs. Orphan or like Miss Taylor or something, they might have lied for us. But Glue, he's the last man. He wouldn't let us in ends. What an idiot! And the thing is, I couldn't tell if Glue was angry or not about this because the way he told us off was that he used the worst analogy possible. The tone was just killed because he used the word porkies and sausages to tell off year 9. That might have been acceptable for receptions. I'm going to put it in it happened because yes, he had a point. But again, an important part of a lecture is that you should be able to know, like, you should be able to deliver it well. And he couldn't. Right, then we got clowns. Oh, this is a good one. I feel like I said at the beginning that that's for about this year. We've had some bangers. Well, there was this phase where Ian Hall liked to use analogies. I bet he saw one of my videos, saw that I used a bunch of analogies and nicked it. So, this new one, he threatened to send us to the circus. Do you guys need to go to the circus? Are you clowns? I mean, have you seen Rich Weiser? He's the living embodiment of a clown, mate. So I'm gonna have to say you had a point, and your point was good because we are clowns. But it's not really an insult, is it? Like, being at the circus is cool, so it kind of fails as an insult. Like, it didn't really work, did it? So I'm gonna move it down to no point here because of the fact it just didn't work in the slightest. Then we got living embodiment of a meme. So Ian said we were trying to be the living embodiment of a meme. We don't even need to try to do that, do we? Again, dreadful because it's like, what's the point? Like, this next one is one of the few scientific lectures he gave. Everybody has abs. For a guy who so far on this list has proved he's not exactly the Einstein, is he? He was this thing about how like everyone has abs. Remember when Achille had abs and we used to mock him for it because I mean if he has abs then I'm black, you know what I mean? But he gave us this intellectual lecture about how everybody has abs. So I'm gonna have to put it in dreadful. You know what? No, I'll put it in had a point, but it's just like, does it even count as a lecture? Right, then we got high-pitched sounds. Now, this was, of course, I swear all of these are about the leader. They've all involved the leader, and it's either me, Luke, or Ainsley getting told off in all of these, pretty much. Because I don't really focus on the bloody Lily ones, because she gets told off for everything. So there was a lesson about waves. No, it wasn't my 2020 song. No, that was 2020. It wasn't about my single wave. No, it was about sound waves. And for some reason, he started playing these really high-pitched noises. And for a moment, a guy who has problems with sounds at time, who, remember, autistic kids, and noise is a big problem with some autistic kids. It really affects them, doesn't it? But the guy thinks, what's a clever thing to do with autistic? Really high-pitched noises. He kept playing these noises, and for a moment, you could see the agitation in his face as it built up, and the pain was too much. He kept complaining. And the leader kept a straight face the whole time, not responding to these complaints. After a while, Mrs. Orphan, who was visibly frustrated herself, spoke up to the leader and said that Ryan find it a problem, and the leader has the audacity to say, Ryan hasn't complained. What do you mean he hasn't complained? He would say it for 10 complaining. Again, this guy claims to have bat ears. Like, everything he claims is just kind of unravelling as this video goes on. Dreadful. I'm tempted to put it in E tier. You know, it's going in E tier because of the audacity. Because of his audacity to say, Ryan didn't complain. Right, then we've got drawn an anime character. I don't really remember. Oh yeah, it was the Rev, wasn't it? They drew the thing from Doom Eternal. It happened here, moving on. Then we got You're Not Watching The Simpsons. The PE man said this as a funny quote, and he had a point. We weren't watching The Simpsons at home. What a cool guy. I just wanted to put in a few lectures from other teachers to prove that not Ian and the art woman aren't the only two people in lecture, and the English. Right, then we got The Hat. Top tier! Of course it's top tier. So Charlie decided in recent weeks to wear a hat that made him look like one of those cunty farmers. I don't know why he did this, but he did. So, because Anne was coming, Ian was like, is it polite to wear a hat inside? He was very reasonable. Mrs. Wolf was very nice and said, we'll put this hat in the thing. And he threw a glue stick at Mrs. Wolf. How dare he? Top tier. Good delivery, good subject matter. Student was in the wrong. Right, cereal bars. Where do I even bloody begin? I'm putting it in no point tier because this was handled so poorly. And I'll explain the cereal bars thing for those of you who don't know. So, one of the crimes that we committed, and this is probably the worst thing we did this year, by the way. Like, last year was attempted murder. This year the worst thing was putting cereal bars. So there's 5 of us, I think, sat in the life skills room. I think me, Charlie, Luke, Lily, and Ellis, I believe. Or someone else. There was someone else there. And I think it's a joke to Lily to put cereal bars in the washing machine. And for some reason, she does this. I don't know what the intention. And the leader was absolutely furious at this. It's not like they put I Love Irene stickers in the bloody washing machine, mate. Like, calm down. But yeah, he was outraged. And, so cereal bars are going in no point. And then the funny thing was that I was blamed for it. I proved that I wasn't. That I was guilty in that. And then the next day, eventually the pastoral Tom Hillman found out who it was. And the funny thing was that Tom Hillman didn't really care. He's like, yeah, I get it's funny, but don't really do that again. Like, he couldn't care less, pretty much. And then the next day, after Ian knows who the culprit is, framed Charlie for it. Why? It'd been like finding out that Maggie shot Mr. Burns. And then they still go off on that other guy the next day. Like, we know who did it. It's like finding out who did the third fart, and then the next day we're still going on about who did it. Unless you've got the memory of Ainsley, you should know. So he's showing that he's got crap memory, terrible scientific ability, and terrible hearing. Right, then we got can't string together a conversation. Dreadful! Apparently we can't string together a conversation. I mean, I can name a few very serious conversations I've had with multiple people in that class, and they were definitely strung together, Mr. Leader Eichel, Irene Snogger, so, yeah. Then we got punching pads too hard. and I know this sounds bad out of context, but Ellis once punched a pad in martial arts so hard that he started bleeding. They had a point, but it's like, what? You didn't need, like, the poor guy's bleeding. Maybe like see if he's all right before you have a go at him for it. That was a bit weird, I thought. Oh, the next one is terrible. We got the walk-in funny lecture. Ainsley, are you doing a funny walk? Do you need the toilet? I tell you, if any other student would have done that walk, Ian wouldn't have batted an eye at it. If it was me, Brom, Eamon, probably even Luke, he wouldn't have complained. But because it was Ainsley, he complained. Because again, as we've seen, Ainsley is this school's answer to the naughty Norman Price, allegedly. So walking funny was terrible. It's close to E-tier, but E-tier are just the absolute, like, epitome of, like, dreadfulness with the high-pitched noises of various. Then we got across the table. I don't remember this, so it happened here. I don't remember what across the table was. And we got Satan Cock. Okay, they had a point. Like, how can I defend this? We said cock. I got told off. Like, where's the defence here? Like, oh, it's not the N-word. Like, how can you defend that one? It's not top tier, but, like, it's close, mate. And we got You're Not Free. I mean, considering Luke was in that shooter for a good few months, it's debatable, but, one time the leader shouted, "You're not free!" I mean, physically, yes, but mentally, again. So, he had a point, I guess, but it's like, we probably are free. And we got Finger. I don't really think this was a lecture, but I just need to mention it. This was genuinely something that happened this year. The iconic joke of a teacher, Miss Rhodes, how to finger. That actually happened this year. I wish I was making that up. Top tier moment. Now we got the Bushy. How many more have we bloody got? We still got a good few amount to go anyway. Then we got Bushy Boy, aka Bush Reacts. There was a few lectures about Bush Reacts. So one of the greatest discoveries this year was the YouTube channel of Bush Reacts. I mean, the Freddy girlfriend problem video sends tears to my head every time. But apparently, at first, the funny thing about this was like we were ironically the biggest fans of Theo, and we would always like go on how great his channel was and make all the songs, sing all the songs in his video. And he thought that we were taking the piss, I think, and he would complain. He complained to Mr. T one time, and then the funny thing, Mr. T told Luke off for it, but then halfway through he starts agreeing with the person he's lecturing. Mr. T. I think you and Mr. Cook need to go back to lecture school, because the number one rule of a lecture is you can't sorry, COVID, you can't bloody agree with the person you're trying to lecture, because then your point is not there. So I'm going to have to go with E-tier because of the fact that he agreed with the person he was lecturing. Because his whole point was like, well, if you're going to put online content up there, you should be prepared for it, which is a very solid point, Feggy. But then why were you lecturing in the first place if you agreed with him? Then we got Whispering Getting Attention. This was stupid. Because there's a whole thing about, he had this whole quote. So Brass showed four of us. I don't remember who it was. I know me, Luke, and Reese were there with someone else. Showed us a TikTok, right? We all crowded around his iPad or so. And he said that we were whispering, get his attention. But yeah, you're the husband of Angela. What's your problem with whispering? We weren't whispering for a start. Like, when have we ever whispered? I mean, the Keeney's whisper is just his normal voice. My God. My guy, dreadful. I forgot about this. Next, we've got Don't Punch a Computer. It's just common sense. I mean, this lecture happened about 2 weeks after the thing happened. Like, it's like the scratch and the fence thing all over again. You can't tell someone off for something months after it's happened. It's got no effect. So I'm going to have to go no point, because there was no point of doing this. This beverage was going on because Ainsley apparently punched the computer in a Miss Rhodes lesson. And if I was in a Miss Rhodes lesson for 5 minutes, I would punch the computer. Have you got great Noah well? Remember when Noah was in the class? I don't. So there was this really This was probably one of the few actual lectures we got where genuine definition of a lecture. Because we were all sat down and they were going on about how, like, we had to be nice to Noah. Only for 1 week later for him to be kicked out of the tutor group. Dreadful. I mean, how are we supposed to be nice to him when they couldn't even handle it? Right, I'll say PH11 being taken. I'll add that one. Right, we got the 4 books. I remember one time he was absolutely outraged about 4 books being on the table. It's like when your mum complains about a room being really messy when there's like a couple things on the floor. So he turned into my mum for a few minutes, but I guess it just happened. Then we got shouting memes. Ian had about 10 lectures this year about memes. I think he thinks that's all we know. Like, no, I don't even like memes. They're crap most of the time. The Morbius stuff is some of the most unfunny stuff I've ever seen. Like, the Minion stuff is slightly better. But God, the Morbius jokes, I don't get it. Like, yeah, we get it. It was a terrible movie. Like, God, I'll just say it happened. No dreadful, why not? Right, I'm gonna save that one. We got Destroying My Teddy. Oh yeah, when I brought in the Teddy special Teddy, they had a point, I guess. It was a bit harsh. But like, okay. Now we've got a few of the best ones. So, we can't have a Your Mum joke one. Why have I got that twice? Your Mum joke, it happened. Right, then we got the 2 PH11 ones. I'll do Pretending to be Sad, right? So, Ian clearly woke up on the wrong side of the bed one morning, and one time he gave this full-on lecture where he was going on about how, like, we create problems for him to solve. I mean, why did you take the role of a school tutor if you didn't expect there to be issues for you to solve? It just feels like a bit out of place there. And one of the key lines that he said in this speech was people pretending to be sad. How does he bloody know? He told me off for pretending to be sad when I was actually depressed. Like, genuinely. Well, I don't know who he was aiming at me. It was probably me or Luke, wasn't it? We were both not doing great at that point. So he was incorrectly and just assuming that we were pretending to be sad. That clearly shows that he's got a great empathy and a great care for all of his students, making him want. You know, it's going in E tier for the audacity for him to say that we were pretending to be sad. Then we got paint drying. So we did a task recently, right, when there was one of his many woodwork crap, right? So I paint it, and I wait for my thing to dry, so I go speak to Bro and Reese, right, for a bit of time, and then by the end of it, then Ian's baffled at the fact that I've left my thing to dry, and he's like, "Go over there, watch the paint dry." My guy, we know you're dull, but how dull can you get? Oh God, I'm paint drying. I'm going to have to put that in Dreadful as well. There's a lot of Dreadfuls this time, but it... Right, now we got the PH11 thingy. So, this is a hard one to place. We got PH11 not coming down, which that one could go straight into Dreadful. That is one of the lectures that made me the most angry, I think. But PH11 taken as a weird one, because yes, Ian had a point, right? So the storyline is, there's this poster in the Lovell classroom that caused me issues. And they attempted to steal it through wrath, and there was good intentions there, but Ian didn't know the intentions and why it was being stolen, so you can see why both parties were correct. So I'm going to put it in It Happened here, because Ian was correct because it's theft and it's one of his things being stolen. But then Luke and Raph were also correct because they were trying to do a nice thing for me. So, I'm going to put in It Happened to. I think that's the definition of what happened. Finally got Miss Rhodes. I just want to rate the entity that is Miss Rhodes, because as bad as the leader is, he doesn't scratch the surface of the joke of a teacher that was Miss Rhodes. I mean, the woman didn't show up for 75% of lessons. When she did, she looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. I don't know why she took this job, because it was a shambolic attempt. Her ICT lessons, I mean, it was scratched for about 2 terms, and that got more repetitive than the mandalas. Code for Life went on for weeks, and most of the time it's just some half-assed thing. She just shows up. Food Tech was alright some weeks, but then She just has a shit attempt at a teacher. And she's literally this year's answer to Mr. the Man. Repetitive lessons, barely there, and should be sacked the next year, but she's still bloody there. E tier for Miss Rhodes. I know it's not a lecture, but I wanted to rate her because I think she's a problem in this school. I think she's more of a problem than Ian, and I know that's small, but I think we're not really going to see him much anymore because he's the new vice head of the school. So what we proved today, well, how many are in the top tier? We got 4 at the top, and 4 at the bottom, plus Miss Rhodes. So there are a lot of great lectures, but throughout the school year we tend to remember the bad ones. But it's mental that but there were a lot of dreadfuls compared to. There was more dreadfuls than had a point though, so I think there were more bad lectures this year than good ones. However, I think there were a lot more good ones because I think top tier we only really had 2 in last year compared to the 4. Then again, 2 of them are memes. And I've probably forgotten a few lectures. I've forgotten the looking out the window thing. I've forgot the zoning out thing. What other ones have I forgotten? Right, I'm going down to lunch early. But they're not as memorable. The Lily Minecraft scandal. Yeah, so that was this year's lecture tier. I'm recording this a week in advance, so if there's any lectures in the last week of the term, screw it. So I'm so bored that I decided to record this, so I hope you love this video.